One of the current issues that is being discussed widely today in the political arena is this question of the MCC agreement with the United States. There is big criticism that is going on by the opposition groups that this government, if elected again in the forthcoming elections, will sign the MCC agreement. Now, in saying so, what they aim to tell the public is, more than the good or bad of the MCC agreement itself, they are emphasizing the fact that they opposed it then, but they are going to do it when they are in power. So it is not a question of, from the point of view of the opposition, it is not a question of whether the MCC is good to the country or bad to the country. According to them, they wanted to do it, but these current people in government opposed it. When they come into power, they want to do it. So the public can see the logic of these arguments. They are not concerned about the other issues that raised by the public with regard to this agreement, because what was being told as bad, as disadvantageous to the country, as affecting our sovereignty, are not of much concern to the opposition or to the government. Now the voice of the government is also is not very straightforward, I should say. Some of the spokesmen on behalf of the government, they say, no, we will consider, they have been saying after they came to power, no, we will amend the agreement to suit our requirements. That was their first reaction. Now we are nearing elections. When the debate is getting hot up, they say, oh, we will not sign the agreement. So can we rely on these assurances? Who are these people who are giving these assurances on behalf of the government? The vociferous voice records of people who are neither policymakers nor responsible to make statements on behalf of the government. They are just making political statements to please the masses, the ordinary people who are just talking about, no, we will not sign these agreements. Now, in this context, in this regard, with this doubt and the conjectures about the possibility of this being revived by the government or any future government, we have to state certain facts for the information of the public, the masses in this country. There is a history associated with this MCC agreement task. We saw several very suspicious things associated with the proposal for this MCC agreement. We saw that they first gave a deadline. They say if it is not signed before this date, it will be taken out of their budget for that year or whatever, and then they were trying to push us to agree to that agreement within that framework. Okay, if you bypass this or go beyond this date, we are lost. We are losing $480 million US. So it was a pressure that was applied at that time, among the many others, for us to enter into that agreement. Then there were many statements made, public statements made by including the American ambassador here in this country. For canvassing for, giving the advantages, explaining it in detail, going beyond all other accepted diplomatic relation norms to sell the idea that MCC is good for the country, you must do it like that. Something similar to that effect. Why? Now this is a grant, no doubt, that is originated by the USA, because MCC is a USA corporation, government corporation. It's not a private entity. So whatever the MCC does is what the USA is responsible for as a government. So we knew that the pressure was being applied because there was a strong need for the USA and the MCC to establish that agreement with us without much delay. In fact, the delay was causing them a lot of worries. That's what it looks like. So what did we do? We examined at that time what is this agreement. Where did this proposal come from? They say that the proposal originated from us, from Sri Lanka. But in fact, actually what happened was, this was a proposal put forward by various think tanks associated with the MCC, which were working in consultation with the MCC, which had their appendages connected to the MCC and the US government, to propagate this idea for the Sri Lankan government to accept it. In fact, it was their suggestion, their project, their proposal. There were two aspects to this thing that they proposed. One was a purported transport project, and the second one was a revival of the land ownership mechanism that is being operated in this country. Land ownership, how the deeds are given, how the ownership is transferred, whether public lands can be given to private lands. All these things were related to our lands, the lands of this country. But United States had an interest in it. So when we context in which this surfaced as a big debate in the country was the discussion that came up on the question of the renewal of the AXA agreement. The AXA agreement, however, was not a new thing. We have had AXA agreements with the American government before, paving way for the recreation and other facilities to be provided to the American army, soldiers or the military, to use our harbor and airports and things like that. So, I mean, with subject to certain conditions that was in operation. So it was told that this agreement was renewed. That's what they said. But when they examined it carefully or subjected it to careful examination, they found that it was not merely a renewal of what the existing AXA agreement that was there. There were so many additions, so many annexures, so many new pages, inclusions added, all that was there, addendums, which were not the same as the AXA that was there before. Therefore, it led to a controversy and people started talking about it. The question of sovereignty came, the question of the security of the area, the region came. All those things came up in that context because when the unpublished versions came unofficially to be known among various circles, people found that there were various elements that were very that has to be considered seriously as a country according to their sovereignty and also about the international relations that they should have with other countries. Therefore, to that extent, it is in that context that the whole question of the MCC came. Immediately following the AXA, there has been a proposal to sign what is called a SOFA agreement, Status of Forces Agreement. SOFA means a state of forces agreement, which means it was a direct provision of facilitation for the occupation of American armies in our lands under certain agreed conditions. Now those conditions virtually were one-sided. Our foreign minister, who then was Mr. Marapana, Tilak Marapana, was summoned to United States, and it has been reported that he had discussions about the SOFA agreement, and he as a lawyer, he has seen certain conditions in that agreement which were detrimental to our sovereignty and our freedom in this country. Therefore, those things came up as issues, and the entire question was laid by after the debate that started. Then in that context, the American government was forcing or virtually trying to influence the country for us to accept the MCC in a hurry. Because MCC 2, although it is a grant for the development purposes, there were certain conditions attached to the MCC which had a similarity to some of the conditions and some of those understandings that were brought in under a SOFA agreement. For example, the immunity to be granted to the American workers or American citizens who would be associated in the implementation of these various projects under the MCC in this country, in our land, was going beyond our laws, going beyond our sovereignty. Therefore, in that context, the country, the people, free-thinking people in the country saw this as a big danger, particularly in the context of what was happening between the big forces, East and the West, about the occupational rights in the region, Asian Pacific region, the sea routes, the air routes, the military operations, military exercises. In the context of all these, there was a tremendous doubt, big doubts expressed by various people concerning all these aspects. Therefore, it became a very big debate. So much so, it could not be passed, although the cabinet took a decision to accept the MCC as it is. As it is. Finance Minister Mangala Samaravira published a book stating, giving the conditions of the MCC just to show that there is no such danger in this MCC agreement. Here everything is open, we are very transparent. Now here I am publishing it. Yes. He knew the conditions in this country, who will read this 300-page agreement in English. He knew of the sentiments and the abilities of most of our people, including the politicians. So many pages. Therefore, he knew there wouldn't be any opposition arising out of its contents, because hardly anybody would read it. This is the way how they assess the situations. But when we went through this document, actually this document was published long after many oppositions were publicly raised about this. I think going into the history, I must say that a few individuals who were concerned about these matters initiated a course of action those days. I also had the opportunity of participating in some of those. We had a meeting participated by the Mahanayakas of the two sectors at the Asgiriya temple, Mahavihara, with leading Buddhist monk prelates, Mahasangha, attended by His Eminence the Cardinal of the Catholic sector, attending that meeting. I participated in that meeting. We discussed the contents, the possibilities, the conjectures that were expressed in the society, that the impending dangers, what has happened elsewhere in the rest of other countries in the world where MCC agreements have been signed, in the historical perspective. Having discussed all that, that discussion went on for more than 4 hours with closed doors in the Asgiri Mahavihara. The Mahasangha with the Cardinal, His Eminence the Cardinal, they issued a joint public statement after that discussion, calling upon the government to stop signing the MCC and to do away with it, because they emphasized, they considered carefully the dangers involved in the agreement. I mean, just to quote one thing, there was one among the several things, I just want to quote one reference here which is relevant to this. Under one condition it says, the government or any other person or entity receiving MCC funding or using program assets is engaged in activities that are contrary to the national security interests of the United States. So in other words, our sovereignty, whatever it is, or whatever we think about our international relations, if we enter into this MCC agreement, we cannot do anything beyond the expectations or the approval of the US government. I'm just citing one example, one condition. There are several like that. There is one section here which specifically says that those American citizens who will be implementing the project under this program, MCC, in this country, while they are in this country, the law applicable to them will be that of the United States of America, not Sri Lanka. It's here. Seeing these dangers, we created an opinion, public opinion in this country, thanks to the religious prelates, the Mahanayakas, Malcolm Ranjit Cardinal, His Eminence. We created an opinion against this move, and because the elections came, the current president issued a statement. This is the statement, that he will not permit the signing of the MCC in this country. He is against. I am having this. This is the printed version of that agreement, the statement. So now, I do not know why these other unimportant persons of the government spokesman, who are repeatedly coming before and saying, no, we are not going to sign it. We are making all kinds of controversial statements, overriding sometimes what is stated by His Excellency the President, who gave this as an election promise for him to be elected. Therefore, we want to emphasize that signing of the MCC agreement will be harmful, dangerous, to the sovereignty of this country, our independence, irrespective of the amount of money that is given as a grant. There are so many conditionalities attached to that agreement which are detrimental to the country in the long run. We have to emphasize this fact. We stand committed with our position, which has been stated before, that MCC should not be signed, and there cannot be any vague statements about it by various people giving various statements. We need the government, those people who now come before us asking for the vote of the people, to state very clearly, are they going to abide by the undertaking given by the President, or is there somebody trying to override the President? Leave it to the public. This is a dangerous situation. We value the sovereignty of the country, even if we have to undergo hardships or delay some of our development programs. Maintaining of our sovereignty, independence is important to this country. Thank you very much.